All right, welcome to July's Q&A for my Patreon supporters. This is actually going out live to everyone, but I'm keeping the questions available only to Patreon supporters to keep it sort of semi-exclusive. Yeah, so this month I've got 3 questions on the docket, but before I do that, I just want to address a couple of things. The first is why it's been a bit quiet this month on the channel. If any of you have noticed, I think I've had one video up on the channel this month, and that was the next iteration of the Star Wars Starforged campaign, and there hasn't been anything else on the channel. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is that July is, in my home life, is pretty busy. My wife and my older son both have birthdays in July, and we tend to go on holiday around the middle of the month, just kind of to celebrate and have a bit of time off. In the month. So we did that this month. So I've just not had as much free time as I normally would to devote to, my hobby stuff, like the channel and writing and stuff like that. However, I have been busy doing other stuff. It just hasn't been editing the next Star Wars Starforged video, which would have resulted in another video coming up on the channel, or recording something else. And what that has been is prep for my Necromunda campaign, which actually has started. We actually have recorded this month our session 0, but we haven't actually live streamed that or anything yet. So what I wanted to do is because I knew there was going to be a gap between recording session 0 and recording session 1. And that gap was basically to give me some time to do some prep in between. I didn't want to do a live stream of session 0, then have a big gap and people lose interest. So the plan is to release session 0 as a video this weekend, and then there's going to be Necromunda content coming out. It's going to be kind of rapid fire, actually, to start off with. It's going to be every week for the first 2 sessions. And with session 0 before that, it's going to be basically 3 weeks in a row. On a Saturday, there's going to be a new Necromunda episode with session 0, then the first 2. And then after that, we're going to be trying to do a fortnightly or every 2-week schedule. So the Necromunda campaign is a sandbox, and it is an investigative campaign. And I'm doing this from scratch. I'm not using anything pre-published. And it's set in the world of Necromunda, which in 40k lore is an interesting planet. I won't go into it too much because I covered a lot of that in session 0. And I kind of like, for people who aren't familiar with the lore, to kind of learn it as we play. But it has meant that there has been a bit of a challenge for me to prep the campaign behind the scenes. I'm going to be using Foundry. We're playing with the Imperium Maledictum rule set, which is brand new. There is a Foundry module that's in beta, but there's no premium content out for that. So I've got to populate all that content myself, as well as preparing my own campaign behind the scenes, which for me, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I like to do things. I like to do quite a lot of prep when it comes to things like this, because I do the prep up front for the campaign, and then in between sessions, it pretty much runs itself, and I don't have to do a lot. So that's the theory behind it. I've been doing a lot of that behind the scenes. I am planning on making a video probably after session 0, so next week, where I'm basically walking through my GM prep that I've done for the campaign, so people can kind of see what I've done, because I think there'd be a lot of interest in terms of how I set up a proper GM'd campaign for a sandbox. So that's all to come in Necromunda. I'm very excited about this campaign because it's the first time I've run not the first time, it's been a long time since I've run a GM'd campaign on the channel. I think a couple of years, actually. So it's nice getting back into the GM seat for a proper campaign and not just a one-shot, something like that. I do enjoy one-shots, but a campaign is very different. It's going to be a very tight campaign with only 2 players, and if one player can't make it, I will still be running with a duet format with just me and that one player, and we'll figure out why the other one's missing. So that's also format I really am interested in exploring a bit more. I've done this in the past. I've done duet games, and I've done 2-player games, and I find those 2 formats plus a 3-player games are the ideal for me. So this is going to be about 12 sessions in length. Roughly, it depends on how things go, of course. So we're planning on finishing around Christmas, and that's all I'll really say about it. There's an amazing overlay artwork done by Harry Bottis. which in fact I'll show a quick. I've got a 30-second clip ready from session 0. I'll just show a few seconds of it so you can see the me and the 2 players and what the overlay looks like, because I think it looks absolutely amazing. So here it is. I'll just show a short clip of it. Okay, so the book has you creating long and short-term goals before you look at the 10 questions, if memory serves. So yeah, I just really, really love that artwork, and it works really well as an overlay with whatever I'm showing on the screen over on the left-hand side and the 3 of us on the right. I'm not going to talk any more about Necromunda. I'm really excited about it. I hope you are too, and I hope you'll tune in next weekend for the start of it, because there's been a ton of work behind the scenes from my perspective in getting that ready to go. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about the Q&A for this month. So the first question we have is from Ed, and I'm going to be a little bit fancier this month, and I've actually got the questions on screen. Ed's question is, I've got a question for you. Why do you think there has been more solo content or interest coming out? As you know, for me, tabletop role-playing is about a group social activity. I'm not convinced about solo content myself, and it has not held any appeal for me personally. How would you convince me to try it? Well, I've got notes here, so I'm gonna read off some of the notes. I did think about some of these questions before, because some of them did require a bit of forethought. But for me, I guess the appeal to solo is, there's a number of appeals, and one of the big ones is that you don't have to rely on scheduling, which is often one of the most annoying parts of the hobby. Trying to get people together to play. That's obviously easier if you have a smaller group, but Ed, I know, having played with you many, many times in the past, also face-to-face, that you tend to have bigger groups of at least 4 players, so scheduling is always an issue. You don't have that. There's no pressure for, having something that looks really good. It's just yourself playing, so that's also another element as well. Another element is that the prep time is actually kind of play time as well, so you can kind of play at your own pace. You can take a step back and you can do some organizational stuff if you want, knowing that no one's going to get bored while you're doing your stuff, because you're just doing it for yourself. That's not really answering your question. Probably not convincing you to play it. Those are some of the things that make it like kind of nice, make it a nice format for role-playing. In terms of the role-playing itself, I think what I find quite nice is that I often will surprise myself when I'm playing. You're kind of telling a story yourself with an oracle, usually, and the oracle basically takes the place of the GM. So you are kind of playing with the GM, but the GM is this kind of like table, basically, or something like that, a random number generator or something along those lines. But it's kind of uncanny how often you roll on results which really seem to fit the narrative that you're building. And I don't know, it's just a nice way to play a role-playing game without any of the external pressures you get from having to prep or perform as a GM sometimes for your players. And it tends to work out almost like you're building a novel. I don't think that role playing as a medium is very similar to literature, which I know a lot of people often say in blog posts and videos and things. I think it's its own unique thing. But when playing solo, it is almost like you're living out a novel, a story. It's this story that's building, and you don't know which direction it's going to go, because that depends on the oracles that you're consulting. And I just find that really kind of an exciting way of playing. It's also a great way to try out a game. If there's a game that you want to play, maybe bring to the table as a GM with a group, and you're not sure about some elements of it, or you want to just kind of give it a spin because it's a new rule set or something along those lines, then solo is a great way to basically jump in, use any old oracle. In fact, using something like the GM Apprentice deck, something I really enjoy. You can use that with any game very quickly. That has all the stuff you need for it. And you can basically just try it out, even with a full group of PCs, and play it like that. I think you've probably done that yourself, actually, Ed, if memory serves. But I'm not sure I'm going to convince you. And in the end, basically, it's just a preference thing. Kind of like with video games. Some people prefer playing multiplayer video games. Some people prefer solo video games. It's a little bit different, of course, but it's kind of like that. There's a preference thing. And if what you enjoy out of role-playing is the social element, then there's nothing to say you should be playing solo. You should be having fun. And because these are games, right? Games are all about having fun. And if you can have fun playing a game solo, then more power to you. I would encourage people to try it because I think it's quite interesting. But if you don't enjoy it, that's also cool. Like, no problem. And to go back to your initial question here, why do you think there's been more solo content or interest coming out? That's really been down to COVID. If I think because people have been stuck at home, they haven't really gotten into the video, video over internet protocol. So VoIP, like Zoom or Skype, that sort of thing, playing online. And so people have been forced to kind of look into solo stuff. And that there has been a ton of solo content coming out and interest in solo coming out in these past few years because of COVID. So I think COVID is absolutely the reason why there's been such a boom. Solo has been around a lot longer. So Taina Pigeon came out with Mythic many years ago. I don't know exactly when it came out, actually. I'm not going to guess. But it was at least a decade ago, I think more than that. And that's also a really cool system as well for playing any game solo. But it hasn't really taken off until COVID. So that's the question. I hope I've answered everything. If you want to try it, cool. If you don't, Ed, I'm not really bothered. It's a preference thing. And if you don't like solo, I'm not going to feel upset or hurt by it. That's absolutely fine. But it's something I really enjoy. Obviously, I've been doing a lot of it, especially since COVID. In fact, I got into it because of COVID, really. I was kind of interested in it a little bit prior to COVID. I had Mythic for a little while, but I never actually got around to trying Mythic. And my first proper solo game that I tried was Ironsworn. So, and Ironsworn came out 5 years ago, just before COVID. And I had it before, and I think I might have played it, but I think I played it online anyway. So I never played Ironsworn like face-to-face in co-op or anything like that. Anyway, I'm jabbering on a bit now. That's the answer to your question. If you want to try it, if you think I've convinced you to try it, that's cool. If not, then don't worry about it. Thanks, Ed. Good question. Next one comes from Peter. Peter asks, at school RPG club, we get 45 to 50 minutes for a session. Currently, I do a quick recap and then we play, but we often find most of the session is spent remembering, reinvestigating, and re-immersing ourselves. Are there any models or strategies for playing super short sessions? This is kind of a tricky one because I think I have run many games that sessions that are an hour. The hour was the cap point, and they have sometimes been under an hour, often for recording on like a podcast. And for me, the way I think a big part of it comes down to the style of the game you're playing. And if you are trying to run something that has investigation, then you're kind of not setting yourself up for I don't want to say success, but you're kind of creating a hurdle for yourself straight away. I think the style of games that work better for short sessions are ones where you can jump straight into the action. You don't have to worry about clues or trying to recap on important information that you discovered previously. I know you've done a bit with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay in your school club. I can't remember which one you're playing right now at this moment, but yeah, I think just the shorter format lends itself better to games that are not investigative in focus. And otherwise, you're doing exactly what I do. You do a short, quick recap. Actually, but I've done something a bit different. I've kind of cheated a bit which is something you can't really do, I guess. And that is, I've done recaps over Discord prior to starting so that we can start with, without needing a recap. There would be maybe a short recap for listeners because the listeners might have had a couple of weeks in between, but it was very, very short, usually 2 minutes tops, something like that, if we could. And then straight into the story. Other than that, really, a technique which is really good is something called in media res, which I'm sure you've heard of. Which, for those who haven't heard of the term, it basically means starting a scene like in the action. So you don't extrapolate on what's going on. You don't set the scene. You basically start straight in at the action, and the It's like if you're watching a movie and the movie starts with somebody like running. You don't have anything about why this person is running. It's revealed through the scene, but you're starting in the middle of the action, and that's a really, really good way to start a lot of role-playing sessions, but especially for short sessions. You're getting the players straight into the action, and that's really important, because it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the scene that we've got a limited amount of time, and we're jumping straight into it. So if that's possible, like do a quick 2-minute recap and then boom, straight into in media res. That would be my recommendation. Other than that, I don't really know how to answer this. It's something I think it depends on the group as well. And with a school group, you've got potentially kids coming in and leaving, and maybe a high turnover. It depends on the group a bit as well, I think. And that's I know a bit of a cop out. But I don't think there's really a magic, silver bullet answer other than try and keep the action moving, try and focus on campaign themes that aren't requiring people to keep notes, keep a lot of information in their head in terms of like clues and things like that. So I would avoid investigative campaigns for short ones like that. One-shots are also really good. So you could do a series of one-shots, try a bunch of different games out in a short period of time. I've done lots of one-shots, not lots. I've done probably about a handful of one-shots in my life that have been that sort of period of time. But you do have to have a story that is pretty snappy, no big twists or reveals or anything like that. It just needs to be, we're trying this game out, we're trying this setting out, something like that. Let's go. And they can be quite fun as well. So those would be my suggestions. All right, hope that helped. Thanks, Peter. And the last question is a big one from Neil. Neil. Okay. ENnie nominations are out. So here are some ENnie style questions that didn't make the cut. Number 1, Hidden Gem Award. And in fact, I'm going to reveal these as we go. Although I would say look down at the bottom of right at the bottom of this post. Feel free to skip number 2 if you don't want to diss a game in public. But if so, I'd be curious to hear your answer in the Patreon Discord. I am actually going to take that lifeline because... we'll get to that in number 2. Number 1, Hidden Gem Award. Which little-known game from the last few years most deserves a bigger audience? This one. This is a great game. It's really short. It's an kind of OSR-ish, Renaissance-y, 17th century minimalist. It kind of hints at it being set in around the Renaissance in Europe. It has black fire rules. It is very lightweight. The whole thing weighs in at 40 pages. It's got some really nice layout and art in it. Kind of simplistic, but I really like it. I really like this game. It's great. It also is not like an OSR aping on D&D because I don't really like D&D. It's OSR doing its own thing, and yeah. I like it. I like it a lot. Unfortunately, I've never run or played this game, so this is something I might need to fix very soon. But it is a really good game. I've read through it. I've done many reviews of it, and I just really, really fancy this game, and I think more people should know about it. It's also made by Games Omnivorous, which is a really cool publisher based out of Portugal. They do a lot of cool stuff, mainly in the OSR scene. Some people might have heard of them because of Mouse Ritter. They helped publish Mouse Ritter with a big box set recently. But they've been doing a lot of other cool stuff, like these cool hex tiles and things that is sort of like a hybrid. Anyway, this isn't about the best publishers. This is about the hidden gem. This is a hidden gem. I wish more people knew about it. It's a really cool game. Go check it out. I'll put a link in the description to the Drive-Thru RPG page for it, as well as the link to where you can buy this in physical. I think if you're not in Europe or if you're in the US, you might be able to buy this through Exalted Funeral, but I'm not 100% sure. But at least get it on PDF. It's a really cool game. It's a hidden gem. I love it. Right, number 2, controversial, Polished Turd Award. Which game is most overrated and doesn't deserve the hype? You're not allowed to say D&D. Oh, pity. Now, I'm not going to reveal this game on the video because it has a fairly big following, and I'm just going to say something about it generally. This game has a huge bit of marketing hype behind it. The people in charge of this are marketing. Well, at least the main person behind this is a marketing professional and really knows how to sell things. And as a result, it's become quite popular. It's had a lot of coverage in kind of media outside of just the usual role-playing circles. But I don't think the game is very good. I think it's very much overrated. It has the mechanics aren't great. The writing isn't great, and it's absolutely overhyped, in my opinion. So that would be the game I give the award to. I'm not saying the name of it. I do have it right here on my shelf. I actually kickstarted it, but I'm not going to show it. I've been kind of umming and ahhing whether I was going to do it on video or not. And the reason I'm not is because I'm being a bit of a coward here. But I do know that there have been some sort of anyway. I don't want to go into it too much. I just don't want to. I don't want to invite the type of targeting that might happen on this channel if I was to name it. So, yeah, that's that one. There is a different game called Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which I also think is a polished turd, but I'm not going to go down that route either. Okay, and last but not least, the Lifetime Achievement Award. Who has done most to advance the hobby or deserves special recognition? This is who I give my Lifetime Achievement Award to. Not Ironsworn, but Sean Tompkin. It's kind of, is it one or both? I don't know. But it's quite excitingly, just today, Sean has released a blog post. It might have come out yesterday, actually. It came out overnight while I was sleeping anyway. That Ironsworn is now 5 years old. And go check out the blog post. I'll put a link to that blog post actually in the description because it's a nice read about the development of a game from start to end. And has some cool little photos of how things have changed. How the cover has changed over time as it's been developed. But really, I think that Sean has he kind of came in and injected interest into solo right when it was needed, right before COVID. So he kind of got really lucky in terms of coming up with something that was a bit different right when it was needed, or right before it was needed, so that when COVID hit, Ironsworn was there with its arms wide open to show people the way into solo gaming. And I think Ironsworn is an absolutely amazing game as it is. I've played a lot of it. I've played it co-op. I've played it solo. And really, it has helped usher in this new era of solo gaming. Now, I mentioned before, Mythic was there in prior. There were a bunch of other like GM emulators and other solo games that came prior to Ironsworn. But Ironsworn did things a little bit differently. It provided a huge amount of procedures and moves to really facilitate solo role playing without like trying to be a generic thing that can encompass absolutely everything. It's very tight in its focus. It has a very specific setting. The game is designed to like tell very specific types of stories in that setting, and it has been expanded to cover other settings, mostly by third parties. There is obviously, I have on my shelf as well, not in my hand, Starforged, which is a space opera in the vein of kind of Firefly, which I also really love. I probably like it better than Ironsworn because I'm a bit of more of a sci-fi nut than I am a fantasy nut. But it's just really great, and it really helped usher in this era of solo role playing that we're seeing today. And yeah, I think, I mean, when it says does it deserve special recognition, it's a very famous game. It's won ENnies. It's very well known. I don't think it needs more recognition. I mean, more recognition is always great. Sean's created a really amazing game here. I think it deserves all the recognition it can get, and sure, it deserves extra special recognition. But I'm really thrilled to see that it has done so well. It's become so popular, and so many people know about it. So absolutely, hands down, I didn't even have to think about this one very long. This is my Lifetime Achievement Award book. If we do something similar next year, I'll have to pick a different game. I don't really know which way I'll go. I didn't have any runners up. This was pretty much straight where my brain went to. So yeah, those are my games. And yeah, some of you who have been around this channel for a while might know that I really cover a lot of Free League stuff. There are no Free League games in this list. And the Polished Turd doesn't go to a Free League product either. But yeah, I just think, especially for like a hidden gem, Free League have created so many big games that I wouldn't really consider any of them hidden gems at this point. Maybe some of their earlier stuff like Coriolis, maybe Mutant Year Zero, I don't know. But yeah, I stick with what I've come up with. I really love these games, especially these two games that I've showed off, and I really liked the exercise, Neil. So that was really fun. Thank you very much for thinking up those questions and those categories. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you as a watcher of this video would give for those 3 categories. What would be your hidden gem? What would be your polished turd? And what would be your lifetime achievement award? Like, who would that go to? Very curious to hear your thoughts. Just as a bit of a fun thing. And if you are curious about that number 2, it's going to be on my Discord. You can find a link to the Discord down in the description below. And yeah, I'm sure some of you will be able to figure it out. Some of you who know me anyway will be able to figure it out. But I'm going to stop there. Thanks very much for the questions, and looking forward to August's batch. So cheers, everyone, and catch you next time. Bye-bye.